Hey everyone, Luke Evans here. Apologies for my technical faux pas. I'm going to have to find out later exactly where I went wrong with that. I'm absolutely perplexed as to where it went wrong, but fair enough. My name's Luke Evans, solutions architect. I've been in I'll keep it brief, but I've been in collaborative technologies for Microsoft technology for about 16 years. I did 6 years at Microsoft doing SharePoint, and ever since then it's been 365, Azure, and today in these days I have a focus on security, identity, and all others is the one. I'm a 2 times MVP, which in M365 apps and services, and yeah, delighted to be here speaking to you today.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm Zoe Wilson. I had the pleasure of working with Luke for 5 years, but for the last year I've been working at Avanade, where I sit in our modern work business, and I look after what we call value realization for Europe. So once people have got the foundations of M365 in, my role is to help them get the most out of it by building on it, by extending, by integrating. That includes kind of Teams apps, integrations, Power Platform. Copilot is where I spent a lot of time this year, but that also includes Mesh for Teams as well. Like Luke, I'm an M365 MVP. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director and very heavily involved in the tech community.
Well, here's a quick kind of overview of what we plan to cover today. I think the ones we did this session about a year ago, and we wanted to kind of have a look and see where things have moved on is the important thing. But just a quick recap about what is the metaverse, what does it mean? Kind of mesh. What is Microsoft Mesh, and what is the difference between Microsoft Mesh and Mesh for Teams is a key point. One of the things we do like talking about is kind of some real world examples of where we think this technology might be able to help. So where we can use Mesh for Teams. Then probably the most important thing, what has changed and what is the latest with Mesh for Teams? What can we play with today? How can we, what can we make better use of, and what's coming down the pipeline really? And prepare, again, taking some of these use cases, taking what technology is out there and considering what can we do to better prepare for this is probably the final thing that we want to close with. If you have some questions, if you could save them to the end, that would be awesome, and we can tackle them then as the thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you can pop your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll just come to them at the end, because I think everybody who's on the call is in attendee mode, so can't come off mute. Okay, so let's start first of all then with the metaverse. So what is it? What does it mean? And if we start with what is the metaverse? It's one of those words where I think there's lots of different definitions for it. But if we just simplify it as much as possible, the metaverse is the internet, but it's the internet in 3D. And it's an emerging 3D-enabled digital space that uses a mixture of virtual reality, augmented reality, and other advanced internet technology to allow people to have lifelike personal and business experiences, but online. And if we look at the Wikipedia definition of this, on Wikipedia, it's defined as a collective virtual space created by the convergence, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, created by the convergence of virtually enhanced physical reality and physically persistent virtual space. And this includes the sum of all virtual worlds, augmented reality, and the internet.
And I think that, and I shamelessly stole this one because I was thinking to myself, what is the metaverse? What is it composed of? And kind of the three key things that help make it up were the important things. First was the devices, and we have a few different kind of ways that we can interact with the metaverse as the thing. We have, and I've got to see if I can get this right, is the thing, but we have, at the moment, we've got 30 million installed headsets, we've got 800 million mobile augmented reality users, and there's a $16 billion market out there in terms of hardware, software, and advertising. Devices and the way that we can interact with it comes in a few different flavors of the thing. So augmented reality is the first one I have, and that's where we kind of use a device to overlay kind of objects or virtual objects over a real world environment. Then you've got virtual, which is basically fully artificial. So that's where you put the headset on. It's fully kind of a fully artificial environment. And the final one is mixed reality, and that's a virtual environment combined with the real one. So it's kind of a combination of the two. The next is M Worlds, and M Worlds is kind of it basically stands for Metaverse Worlds. The other name is the short word is M Worlds, which we've got in screen, and they're basically immersive applications that offers brands the possibility of reaching new audiences in different ways. The key thing about M Worlds is they can run on, they might be able to run on mobile phones, tablets, PCs, browsers, and AR and VR headsets is the thing, and it can be built to host its own virtual communities, content, and each has its own kind of different business model, rules, and user accounts. Now, that one doesn't mean a great deal to me, but I think the easier one to think about is maybe a lot of existing M worlds that we have out there today kind of started as kind of gaming applications, really is the thing, but they've added features and attractions. So a good example of this might well be Fortnite, which started as a game, and now they're hosting things like kind of virtual concerts, map creation tools. Roblox is another one. These kind of typically these M worlds basically have spawned off the back of gaming applications. They may no longer be constrained just by gaming is the important thing. So Fortnite is a great example of what an M world can be considered. At the moment, we've got 300 to 500 million active users of these M worlds. So most of them are going to be games. In all honesty, it's probably the simple way of thinking about it. But there are things like the metaverse and so forth, which are kind of divergent from games is the important thing. And probably my least favorite of all of the ones that they come up with is kind of virtual assets is the thing. And I think it's more about digital ownership of an object is the thing.
You're not convinced by NFTs then, Luke?
You can tell that I'm not entirely sold on this one. It's probably the simple answer, Zoe. But I think there is a cool one out there that I think you usually call to. So I'll probably defer to you. But I like the idea of having, a virtual avatar. I'm on board with that. But maybe the ability to customize your avatar and possibly get, specific brands like maybe shoes or something like that. A virtual asset is the one that I could actually see some use of, but I don't really buy into the whole NFTs. But I do virtual transactions, that whole piece, crypto and that. I can certainly see the value of that in terms of virtual transactions. And you've got over $50 billion of that. I think for me, I don't really buy into the NFT thing, but I do think virtual assets could well be a possibility. Certainly that helps it enhance the experience in these M worlds that we're using. So the ability to customize an avatar and maybe buy your favorite pair of sneakers and whack them on your avatar, I think is one that I could see working. And I'm 100% sure people would buy it. I just know based on, I do a lot of online gaming, people go crazy with kind of, customizing their characters, paying actual real world money for this stuff. So that one I can totally see that being a use case is the simple answer on that one.
I do love the fact that as a confirmed sneakerhead, the example that you used was actually being able to buy sneakers in a virtual world.
Exactly. If I could buy custom kind of sneakers and maybe like a custom keyboard, then I would be laughing. That would be my avatar. Rocking and rolling is the simple answer. And I think this one is another interesting one is the thing. I think typically, and me and Zoe love to look at this, but we typically like looking at the work trend index. So an annual report from Microsoft that they produce, and we love pulling kind of stats out of that. Is the important thing. The most recent one is on AI and Copilot, and that was a very interesting read. But the previous one that we did was around Metaverse, and we just pulled out some key stats from the work trend index is the thing. And I think some of the key ones that we pulled out: 52% of people of employees are open to using digital immersive spaces in the metaverse for meetings or team activities next year. 47% of employees are representing themselves with a digital avatar in these meetings, and 16% of employees don't want anything to do with the metaverse whatsoever is the thing. And I think the final one, and actually this isn't from the work trend index. I pulled this one from Gartner, but by 2026 they reckon 25% of people will spend at least 1 hour a day in the metaverse for work, shopping, education, social, or entertainment. And I mean, for gamers that's an easy one. But for the wider populace, that one might be a bit more. Now, Zoe, I think there is an interesting one around the generational divide. Is that right? I seem to remember you always call out that one.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting stats when you actually start to look at the population by generation and their attitudes to the metaverse. So about 51% of Gen Z and 48% of millennial workers are the most interested. So about half of those generations are the most interested in using the metaverse for work. And then 37%, so slightly less, of Gen Xers being open to it. However, when you look at baby boomers who are that kind of age 60 and up, only about a quarter of those are actually keen on using the metaverse for work. So that starts to show some really interesting dynamics when you look at the the different generations that we have in work.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of spread across the board is the important thing. Not everyone, I think, is as keen to jump into the metaverse as others. Is the real takeaway for me is the thing.
Okay, so we've had a look at what the metaverse is more broadly. Now, let's start to look at Mesh, which is Microsoft's metaverse offering.
Cool. And we've spoken about virtual reality, so fully artificial worlds, augmented reality, where we're overlaying kind of objects using a device into the real world, and they have the potential to completely transform how we work and collaborate. So pardon the marketing hyperbole over there, but there are a number of early applications in place, from remote AR assistance for field workers to virtual events in VR worlds. And I think just a key one there is really, actually we'll cover it in the use cases, so bear with us is the one, but there's some cool stuff that we can do with that. I think the important thing here is that this is kind of Microsoft offering is the important thing. And they describe it as a collaborative platform that allows anyone to have a shared virtual experiences on a variety of devices. The platform is a result of years from Microsoft research and development in areas ranging from hand and eye tracking, probably from the Kinect, from the original Xbox, from Xbox 360, sorry, and HoloLens development to creating persistent holograms and artificial intelligence models that can create expressive avatars. It's built on the Azure platform, and you can see on the right there's a brief demo of kind of Mesh and how it could work is the thing, but it's more just a kind of a lead up to really the key subject at hand, which is Mesh for Teams.
Yeah, so but just before we go into Mesh for Teams,
Yeah.
I think if we just talk a little bit more about Microsoft Mesh. So when we think about what Microsoft Mesh does, it's essentially providing core functionality for developers and creators to be able to build custom and persistent environments that help people feel present and interact with one another. It does all of the heavy lifting to enable environments and interactions to stay synchronized. So regardless of whether people are joining from their PC, whether they're joining from VR headsets, it still allows them to share their experience at the same time. It also uses things like spatial audio to mimic the directionality of sound in the real world, so that as you approach a group of people, you start to hear their conversation more loudly in the same way that you would if you were actually in a conference room or in a meeting room physically. And when we think about what Mesh is giving developers and creators, it's providing them a set of tools that integrate with Unity. So it's allowing people to use Unity to create new 3D environments. It allows them to use cloud scripting to add interactivity using things like C# and .NET. It allows them to be able to enrich the user experience with integrating interactive content, so things like videos and stuff like that. And actually, we used to have, before Altspace VR was sunsetted, we actually used to have a demo where we could start to show some of that integration, not in the same way that Unity does, but to give you a sense of what that feels like.
Well, I think the hottest topic on everyone, well, certainly from my point of view, Unity, Zoe. I don't know if you've seen all the fun and games around that, have you?
Yeah.
So I was reading through this last night and thinking about, well, what on earth is this going to have? What sort of implications is it going to have? Now, for people that didn't realize, Unity had made some, I think, licensing changes around how many, anything that used Unity was the interesting thing. So I was wondering what on earth that's going to have on Microsoft Mesh, I'm sure. They're looking to walk back, I think, the changes that they plan to introduce. So I'm not sure where we're going to land, but it's one to keep an eye on in terms of actually developing stuff for Microsoft Mesh, in terms of Unity and what actually happens there is the thing. And Enzo, you actually smashed the you smashed Microsoft Mesh much better than I did, so maybe you should have handled that one. So thank you. I mean, do you want to go for this one, Zoe, or shall I?
Let you.
All right. So, I mean, for me, it's really extending that platform that Zoe spoke about, those experiences, and taking it into kind of Teams is really what it's all about. So that is really Mesh for Teams. It's a mixed reality overlay that allows, it's extending these virtual or persistent spaces into Teams from Microsoft Mesh is the important thing, and people will be able to access it through mixed reality glasses and VR headsets. I think the key here is, well, certainly from what we've seen, is to offer an immersive collaborative experience. So you can see on the screen, we've got like a quick look and feel of what it might look like is the thing. And the key thing here is it's built on 3 different key areas is the thing. The most important one I would say is the acquisition of AltSpace VR. And like Zoe said, we last year we were here, we had access to AltSpace VR. We could run through a demo of what it might look like and how it might play and what you can do. It was a bit of rooting tooting good fun. It's probably the simple way of putting it. The demo was always action packed, so unfortunately we can no longer do that because it's been sunsetted. Immersive Teams features like together mode, so bringing in some of those core concepts that we have in Teams today and translating them into Mesh is another key element, and a vision for the metaverse, which is a bit wish-washy. The other 2 I can buy into, but a vision for the metaverse. What does Microsoft plan to do? How do they expect these kind of spaces to work, and how can they bring them to Teams is the thing. And what are some of the key features here? I think there's a few key ones that we would typically call out is the one. 3D avatars is the first one, and we'll come to avatars in a bit later. Oh, hold on. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. So we've lost the deck.
You've lost the deck.
Yeah, it's back now. I don't know. It was your desktop for a moment for some reason from my side. And yeah, I mean 3D avatars. We'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. I'll probably leave that one to Zoe when it actually comes to it, and she can talk through it. But it's you can create a 3D image of yourself in Mesh for Teams is the important thing, and it can be true to life or it can be customized how you prefer. Holoportation. Now, this is a crazy cool word, but what does it actually mean? It means it can take a 3D image, a very high res or a very lifelike image of yourself and of you, the user, and basically represent you as a hologram in one of these virtual spaces. And as ever, I'm excited and I'm delighted to see Zoe's cats have joined us. The 3rd presenter, as it ever is. Whenever we do sessions, they always rock up. So I'm happy to see her stop by, or him. I don't know which one it is. But the key is that it's going to take a holographic image of yourself and represent that in Mesh for Teams. And I think we have a demo somewhere or a screenshot of it, so we can hopefully call that out a bit later. Now, Zoe did call this one out earlier, but audio cues. Audio will inform your facial animations using audio cues is the thing. And this is basically taking audio cues and representing that on your face or your virtual avatar is the thing. Workspaces. Let's have a look. Okay. I can see some questions coming through, so we'll tag them a bit later as the one if that's okay. But thank you, keep them coming in. The Mesh for Teams experience centers around 2 key elements: the virtual representation of users, so that's the avatars, and the other key one is the virtual representation of workspaces is the thing. And what do your areas look like is the thing. Now, that is kind of where your users are beamed into, and I know you can build your own custom workspaces, and we hopefully have some kind of demonstrations of that or what they might look like in a bit is the one. So it's not just your avatar, your person, it's the actual areas that they work in or the virtual environments that they work in. And the final one, probably the one that interests me most, is the multi-device compatibility. So it's going to be available on any major immersive reality gear, including VR headsets. So that hopefully is and I know that it was the case, but you have the Meta Quest, the Meta Quest Pro. I have no idea, but I didn't actually check before this, but the what's the Apple Envision Reality? What's it called, Zoe? What's the exact name? It's too expensive for me to afford, so I can't say I've shown that much interest. But the Apple headset, and it will be also on your kind of iOS, Android, standard tablets and PCs, which are slightly less exciting. But I just wonder if it's going to come to the Vision. It's going to kill me now. I think it's like Vision Pro.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called either. I think I saw the price. Excuse me. I think I saw the price of it and switched off.
Yeah, it's Vision Pro, so I'm hopeful it'll come to that. I didn't actually do the research because it's out of my league is the one to play with, so I haven't shown as much interest as I probably would normally.
even as someone who normally likes to get the latest gadgets.
I can't get enough of gadgets, but that one is even beyond me, unfortunately. I cannot get enough of gadgets, but that one's a step too far, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's move on then and look at some of the use cases in the metaverse and Mesh teams. Now, we've just got a few examples. These are Avanade examples where I work, because we have done quite a lot with the metaverse, and this will just give you a bit of a flavour of how the metaverse could be used in an enterprise perspective. So the first one is for a community event. We use the metaverse to actually run a community event to bring together communities of practice across the organisation, in this case, the Office 365 community, to allow for the sharing of information and networking across people who work in different parts of the world, so globally distributed. We also have all team meetings as well. I love the guy on the horse here. This was essentially a lineup of presentations from various leaders and people on stage, then followed by the ability of all of the attendees who were present to actually be able to just walk around and go up to people and network, the same as they would if they were in an in-person event. We've also got use cases for fun events as well. So it was used for an Avanade Christmas event, and we integrated things like a virtual lottery as well, so that there was that interactivity inside the metaverse that that kind of allow people to get involved in things that are a little bit more fun. We've also used it for our employee resource groups or community networks. This was for a Pride event. And one of the things that was really interesting about this actually was that there was like a talent show that was run inside the metaverse. So people performing live on stage, everybody else was able to kind of watch in the audience, which was super impactful.
And I think, yeah, there's some awesome stuff here on this one. Certainly, one of my favorites is the lazy egg in the bottom right, Gutamama. And I don't know how on earth he got in there, but I absolutely love that guy. So I'm excited to see him in there. And you can see the quiz on screen just next to him is the one. So, yeah, pretty darn cool.
And then one of the last ones, which actually we see as being, a reasonably common use case as well, is virtual reality recruiting. So being able to run things like graduate recruiting events where potential candidates could actually come into the metaverse, walk around and interact with information from different parts of the business, so they could understand career opportunities and things like that. And when we think about that generation of people who are leaving university and coming into their career, this can be a really different way to connect with them, that can demonstrate the types of tech that they might get to work with, and being at the forefront of what technology can enable. But there's a whole heap of other use cases as well. These are just some screenshots of some of the things that that we've done, but we see loads of different types of use cases for the metaverse or for Mesh for Teams as well. We talked to people who are looking for virtual training or immersive training, and I think Sarah Fenner did a session on this earlier. Events, trade shows, exhibitions, anything where typically you get a lot of people together and you want that networking to be part of it. This can be a really powerful scenario. And then when we think about the the work environment, being able to give people a different way to experience and interact with meetings can also be super powerful as well. Any more on here you want to call out, Luke?
I think I would be remiss not to mention MR was the one. So the remote assistant guides is probably my favorite one. Favorite like real world use of the technology is the thing. I think the ability to get a second set of eyes, possibly. Yeah, so say you wear the HoloLens and you're going to go, and for me, maybe we're going to go work in a data center, and we can get a experienced pair of hands and eyes anywhere in the world, kind of using this technology without having to have them physically kind of in that location is the thing. So imagine, we need to fix a server in some scenario in a remote area, and we only have people that don't really have experience or knowledge of working with that specific kit, and the ability to kind of have them just hop onto a call with an experienced colleague or kind of specialist and actually guide them through the process is just too cool for school, really, in terms of how I think about it is the one. Step-by-step guidance, it really is the important thing. And remote assistance, surgical procedures, I mean, that's a bit it's a bit more extreme than my scenario, but again, a pretty darn cool one is the thing. And
sorry, I'm just just bear with me 1 sec. I'm just resharing files because I realized I had not actually shared audio, and we've got a couple of videos. I'm gonna be back. I just want to say a big shout out to Patrick as well for answering questions in the chat. I think it's fair to say Luke and I are experts on Teams, but it's really great to actually have Patrick, who is a proper metaverse expert, in here answering some of the questions. So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, he's absolutely killing it, Zoe, because I've been checking the chat and I've been looking at some of these. I didn't have the answers to hand is the one, so I'm very thankful for Patrick. Thanks, buddy.
All right, so this is the point where we'd normally do a demo, and we'd make it a little bit of fun with with Altspace VR, just to give you a sense of what this might mean when it comes into the enterprise. But we're in a situation now where Altspace VR was sunsetted, and the immersive meetings, Mesh for Teams, and Microsoft Mesh is all still very much under private preview. So there isn't actually anything that we can demo. But what we did want to do is just talk about, and I think we were in the same situation last year, weren't we, Luke, where we submitted for this. We were hoping to be able to show more than we actually could at the time.
Well, we were actually hoping that we could actually, hop on a call and kind of show you guys what it all looks like. But unfortunately, we're kind of in a state of flux. So this one, I mean, I would hate to say stay tuned till next year, but we can only hope at that point we'll actually have access. But unfortunately, our hands are kind of tied on this one. Like Zoe said, we'd usually have a bit of a laugh and a blast going around Altspace VR at this point, but unfortunately that's been sunsetted, so we can't really do anything too exciting in terms of a demo.
All right, so when we talk about what has changed since last year, sorry, I've just realised my cat's on the bookcase.
I thought that's why you were laughing, Zoe. It was the one I saw him jumping around in the back. I was enjoying that one. I think Zoe grabs a drink, or
okay, so one of the things that has changed is that avatars are now generally available. So what this means is that within Teams you can go and add the avatars app and create your own avatar to be a virtual representation of you. It will let you create up to 3 different avatars. So you could have like a business avatar, you could have a casual avatar, or a fun avatar. It really depends how you want to show up in the different meetings where you're using it. Avatars are available to lots of different licensing SKUs. So the M365, E3 and E5, Office 365, E1, E3, E5. It's available to people who've only got Teams Essentials, and it's also available in all the Microsoft 365 business licensing SKUs as well. So it is avatars are widely available for you to use today. And here's some examples of different avatars.
And I think that just to recap, that it was made available, or generally available, in May 23. I think was when this came to fruition. That's when we could actually have it out there as the one. So it was in preview for some time, but now this should be something that you're able to kind of play with as the thing.
And when we think about the benefits of avatars, so the inclusion and accessibility side of it is one that I think people often don't appreciate. So being able to allow people to present in meetings as they feel, and this could be people who are going through a gender transition. They might be early on that journey and they want to represent as the opposite gender whilst they, or as the gender they feel like they are whilst they go on this journey. or people who might have had an injury or an accident or something like that, and they still want to be physically present. They want to be more than just an image or initials in a Teams meeting, but they don't feel comfortable having the camera on. Or it could be people who are in an environment where they don't want their camera on, even with background blur or with custom backgrounds. Maybe they don't want their camera on, so allowing them to have a physical presence that allows for kind of expressive communication is super important.
I think, yeah, the next one is allowing for expressive non-verbal communication, and I think the key one takeaway here is the ability for us to basically replay whatever you've got going on, and tell me if I get this wrong, but it's more about expressions on your face is the key thing there. Zoe is the one, and representing on screen kind of what you're feeling. So it might well be that, imagine if you didn't have your camera, you didn't feel comfortable with your camera on, you might well miss some of these non-verbal cues that you're putting out there during the course of a meeting.
Even just things like being able to press the applause button in the avatar and have it applause, so people can see that you're reacting and you're doing something, but you don't have to actually have your camera on.
And I think the next one I can certainly speak to, Zoe, is one of the key ones, because I mean this week has been absolutely chaotic for me, and I've been stuck in meetings non-stop. I'm losing track of the day and the time, but I think a lot of the time I put my camera on so people can see I'm there, see that I'm interacting. But the ability to basically turn that off for a bit and still have a visual representation of myself is fantastic. So the ability for me to kind of not have to worry so much about looking at the camera, engaging with the camera, paying attention to exactly what I'm doing, not worrying if my cats are going to come in and jump on my desk or anything like that. I think this can certainly help overcome some of that meeting fatigue, because it can be draining being on camera 24/7 and the whole day. So another one that you can add to it.
Yeah, I completely echo that as well. I spend a huge amount of time in meetings, and I think there was one day last week where I was in consecutive back-to-back 30-minute meetings from 10 o'clock in the morning through until like 6 or 6:30. That was literally like 30 minutes. And by the end of it, you're just so drained and tired that actually being able to use an avatar instead is really really valuable. And then the last one, being able to build connections without turning the video on. It can be super depressing when you're in a meeting and you're the only one with your camera on, and you're literally just looking at you're looking at like a sea of initials or people's photo that's like 10 years old or something like that. It's really hard to know whether you're landing the right messages. You've got no body language that you can read. You're not getting any physical feedback. So being able to use an avatar, or being able to have someone in your meeting with an avatar, can allow you to build connections in a way that simulates that non-verbal communication and physical body language without actually needing to have your camera on. Now we've just got a quick video as well. This is something that we were hoping we'd be able to demo, but if I just press play and then.
Great job, Miriam.
Yeah. Nice.
I can hear it, Zoe.
Sometimes hybrid meetings can feel a little impersonal.
Hello?
Avatars for Microsoft Teams gives people the choice to show up how they want, helping them feel more comfortable and included. But can we take digital presence a step further?
Just a minute.
Immersive spaces for Teams help interactions feel more engaging, more connected, and more natural. Great job, Miriam.
Yeah, nice presentation.
But what if we could take it even further by building a custom immersive experience just for your organization? Microsoft Mesh elevates orientations, trainings, and employee experiences by transcending time and space. No matter where you are, you can come together in one place. Connect like never before with Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Mesh.
And I think for that one, just specifically, he did say at the top, but just to call it out, this is currently in private preview. In terms of I unfortunately don't have access, so I can't speak to how it might play out just yet. But the video will hopefully kind of give you clues as to that. I think that the key one that I would probably ask Zoe is when do you think we might have access, or when do you think we might see it? Do you have any dates or timing around when we might see this one pop up? Is the thing.
No, I don't. I mean, if you think about how long it's been in private preview, I'd like to think that we start to get broader access to it soon. But I think Patrick might have more of an idea than me. But he's already said that there's lots of things that are covered by NDA. So yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully, we'll get an announcement at Ignite, but that's a personal observation rather than based on any level of insight. Okay, so how to prepare.
I think we've had to think about how you might approach this and how you might wish to prepare, or what things could you kind of do to get ahead of the curve is probably the most important one here. And I think for me, I mean, you can get going with a lot of this stuff with a standard computer, mobile phone, etc. But I think the key thing is, if you were serious about it, you might well look to your organizations and see if there's a case to be made to get your hands on some kind of virtual reality headsets or hardware. I mean, I'm a gadget guy, so naturally I would think about how can I have the best possible kind of testing experience with this. What kind of hardware would you use? How would you manage it? I know there are some cool integrations coming with Met or with the Quest headsets and Intune, and how you can manage them. So it's more just thinking about what kind of devices might you want to use for this. Use cases, I think we did cover some cool ones out there. I think certainly for me, there are a number that you could immediately add value, certainly on the remote hands. I think some of the more fun kind of social events that are distributed across the world is another great possible one. Do you want to go for virtual spaces, Zoe, or shall I?
Yeah, so virtual spaces, I think there's a couple of different lenses here. One is there a persistent space similar to the Accenture virtual floor that's used for like corporate events and things like that. Is there kind of an actual physical space, but also in terms of that immersive meetings as well, is there customized, branded, immersive meeting spaces that you want to use for certain types of meetings? They're not likely to be relevant for all meetings, but thinking about the types of meetings where that extra dimension, that virtual reality and ability to interact differently can add a different level of experience for people.
Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, the last two kind of an approach and lessons. I think the approach and lessons, we used to often encourage people to go get AltSpace VR and have a look at how you might create a virtual space and how you might interact with the world. And I think it is somewhat more constrained now. So it's tougher for us. But I think some of the key lessons that we had around kind of preparing for this certainly were, I think, from wider industry was the thing. So I think some of the ones was really around moderation in terms of lessons, in terms of how we can prepare for this. I think, what else would I say on these?
Yeah, so that point on moderation is a really interesting one, isn't it? I remember I don't know, maybe summer last year when we were talking about the metaverse, and there was an article that we found for Facebook's World Meta, and they had people who basically volunteered to be like guides or moderators who would welcome new people into this virtual world, and they'd help them figure out the controls and how to navigate and things like that. And they ended up with people just trolling them. These people who were basically volunteering to provide a service had people coming into this virtual world and getting in their face and virtually assaulting them. And there's some really interesting lessons around like behavior and etiquette and boundaries and things like that come out of that.
Certainly. So I think maybe it's worth just considering. It's a shame we can't play with the stuff anymore in terms of what a virtual world might look like, but in terms of an approach, you might well want to think about code of conduct in there. And I think we've got some on the next slide that might kind of detail a bit of sort of key aspects that we might consider, but code of conduct, kind of how do you want to use it in terms of the use cases and so forth. But yeah, the other key one is trust and.
Give you a 5-minute heads up.
That's okay. I think this is our last slide is the one, so I think we're doing all right for time. But thank you for the shout. And just trust and privacy in the metaverse was our kind of final one of things that you might want to consider is the important thing. It kind of feeds on from that approach and lessons learned. I think the nice thing is with Mesh for Teams and Microsoft Mesh, a lot of these are kind of taken care of is the nice thing, because this is a broader kind of thinking one. But for me, a lot of the things around kind of privacy, so data collection, use and sharing, security is going to be built on kind of dependable and well established kind of technology. So it'll be built on Azure, it will be built on Entra in terms of your identity and authentication, it will be built on Microsoft Teams in terms of Mesh for Teams, so we can quite easily use some of the kind of the groundwork is a lot of the time is there for us, is the thing. Yeah. So, and resiliency is probably the other key one that I would probably call out from my point of view in terms of the technology. I think, Microsoft thankfully is going to take care of that for us is the important thing, as opposed to us having to worry about all these different considerations. And Zoe is spot on. The letters don't mean anything here. So if you saw the chat, it was going to be on my deck, and I have a bunch of kind of favicons and emotes and stuff that should be there in place of the letters. So you have to forgive the slides due to the last minute change of presenter.
So then if we think about trust and privacy in the metaverse from a different angle as well, I think that if we think about this from the people side of it, like we were just saying, having that code of conduct, making sure that people understand what the right etiquette is, what the right types of behavior are, making sure they've got the right type of change and adoption support. So helping them understand what's in it for them, helping support them on their journey as they start to use the metaverse. Making sure that experiences that you create are designed to be diverse, inclusive, accessible, that they're open to everybody, and making sure that that when you're creating experiences, whether these are for work, whether they're things you're doing for fun with friends, make sure that you're thinking about that well-being aspect as well. So making sure that you've got the right considerations to physical and mental health, and that you're not creating anything that could potentially be harmful to anybody. Any final call outs, Luke?
I think the final call outs for me were apologies we couldn't put on more of a song and dance for the session today. We're somewhat constrained as to what we can show. The best bet you can probably do to try to better prepare is probably get playing with the avatars. We would direct you the way of AltSpace VR, but that's no longer available. If you're a developer, maybe look at what does it take to kind of get going with this sort of stuff. If you're an admin or an end user, it's probably the avatar route is probably the best thing to get dip your toe into the metaverse or Mesh for Teams. Really is the important thing. I think that was it.